Welcome once again to the Mastering Security Essential Training. It's exciting to see a large turnout from different locations, all here with one common goal: to gain the skills to protect and defend in today's digital world. Cybersecurity is not just a career skill, it's also a responsibility. Every click, every system, every piece of data needs someone to know how to safeguard it. That is exactly what you'll be learning here: how to think, act, respond like a cybersecurity professional. Over the course of these sessions, you'll be exposed to some practical techniques, foundational knowledge that can be gain the skills to protect and defend in today's digital world. Cybersecurity is not just a career skill, it's also a responsibility. Every click, every system, every piece of data needs someone to know how to safeguard it. That is exactly what you'll be learning here: how to think, act, respond like a cybersecurity professional. Over the course of these sessions, you'll be exposed to some practical techniques, foundational knowledge that can be applied immediately, whether you are protecting personal data or securing enterprise system, which is the question and answer segment. So it's now my pleasure to introduce our instructor for the session. It has been sent to you in the community, and you can see how robust experience he has. His name is Ade Folorunsho, a highly experienced cybersecurity professional. He has trained professionals across various industries, which I may not have the time to mention every one of them now. And he also brings a wealth of hands-on expertise to this classroom. Ade, over to you.
Good evening, good day, everyone, and compliments of the day in whichever part of the world you're connected, or where you're connecting from. It's glad to have you here. Yes, I hope my screen is visible at your end. Can I quickly get a thumbs up if this screen is visible at your end so I can get into it? Sorry. Except today. Yes, mastering cybersecurity is the crux of this training. And what we will be mastering here, the knowledge we'll be acquiring, is basically the fundamentals of cybersecurity, which will include understanding the objective, the principles of understanding cybersecurity itself, what it implies and what it entails, the principles and pillars of cybersecurity. Then would also be mastering the objectives of cybersecurity, the threat landscape, digital threat landscape, and also areas of competencies in cybersecurity that would help inform our decision as to the area of specialization. Cybersecurity is not just an area of specialization, it's a professional career, it's professional discipline, but it has areas of specialization. So we shall be mastering these areas of specialization in today's class or today's session. And then in this journey, we shall also be mastering cybersecurity GRC. We shall also be mastering, which is governance, risk, and compliance. We shall be mastering data privacy and protection. In this journey too, we shall be mastering security operations and defense. So the session for today, we are looking at the fundamentals of cybersecurity. I want to believe when it comes to mind, the word cybersecurity, when it comes to mind, there's this thought that strikes. Or let me say one of two thoughts that strikes. Number one, it will be the thought of threats. Then the other will be the thought of safety. If you have been a victim of a cyber attack, you become paranoid about cyber environments or digital environments. And so when you hear cybersecurity, what strikes is the thoughts of threats, the thought of an attack. Otherwise, what will come to your mind will be the thought of safety, protection. Now, you're correct. Whichever comes to mind, very correct. But then let's put it in the right perspective. Cybersecurity should not connote threats or vulnerability at first. That shouldn't be what it implies to you. What cybersecurity truly implies is the protection of digital systems. When we say digital systems, we're talking about computing environment driven by technology. Now, these digital systems basically can be desktop, on-prem, within a network, or in the cloud, the internet, so to put it. So it means the protection of these environments and the resources within these environments is a necessity. So the acts, the process, and the skills to protect these digital environments, be it just that application on your desktop or that data. Let's assume your system is not connected to the internet or is not connected to any network. It can be infected. The fact that it's not connected. As long as you're using a storage device that is infected, you plug through USB or through any other channel, a memory card reader, your system just might be infected. So that system is also vulnerable to cyber attack. Do not connect it to any form of computing space or environment. Your network, that office network, that home network, or that corporate intranet or extranet, or the internet that practically we all connect to almost on a daily basis, not even around the clock. Protecting that environment first, and then the resources within that environment is what cybersecurity entails. And I need you to know that cybersecurity is not just for me alone or for experts, professionals who assume or who are certified to practice as cybersecurity experts. No. In today's world, cybersecurity is a necessity, a necessary skill for everyone who interacts with a digital system. Your phone, as small as it is a digital system. The fact that you interact with that device, the need to be cyber aware, cyber informed, cybersecurity conscious is a necessity, is non-negotiable. So cybersecurity as of today and going forward is the responsibility of everybody, not for those who aspire to become cybersecurity experts. Good. What if you nurse a career path in cybersecurity? Is that not enough? It is good. But then it becomes it's necessary for all of us because we interact with digital systems, digital resources, digital devices that will become cyber knowledgeable. So we can identify certain factors or causal factors of cyber attacks. A lot of cyber attacks can be addressed at the end user's points. An end user, so I don't put in the dark, an end user is that individual who uses digital resources. Like you have a phone and you connect to the network, perhaps the internet, or your GSM service provider, if that's the network you're using, you are an end user. You have a system connected to the internet or to your office network, your home network, you are an end user. As long as you are using the resources within that digital space, you are an end user. So a lot of cyber attack can be addressed at end user's point, the point of usage, before calling or escalating such incident or events to the backend experts who can now act appropriately. Also, the goal of cybersecurity is to protect against access, unauthorized access. You know, there won't be a successful cyber attack without access to that resource. The attacker would have contacts, virtual contacts, physical contacts, or both to that resource in order to launch a successful attack. So the goal of cybersecurity is to protect against unauthorized access, also protect against unauthorized usage of these digital resources, also protect against unauthorized disclosure. This addresses data privacy. Protect against unauthorized disruption. This might constitute a threat to integrity. Protect against unauthorized modification or destruction of information. We're going to look at this concept as we progress in this journey. Then you have to think of a digital shield. For you to think of cybersecurity as a digital shield. If you understand warfare, like when in the medieval days, when soldiers go to war and they have these shields to protect themselves, that is what cybersecurity does to your digital resources. Your digital resources include hardware, software, and data. So let's look at the pillars of cybersecurity before we look at the objectives or principles of cybersecurity. There are three key pillars holding cybersecurity. One is you and I, people. Two, technology. And three, process or processes. I like to put this in the right perspective, that technology alone is not enough to protect the digital space. Oftentimes, we rely so much on technology. We trust our technological integrations and installations, believing that once these technologies are there, they said it's firewall and it can protect our network against unauthorized access or protect our network against intrusion and extrusion. Oh, he said it's an intrusion prevention system, it's an intrusion detection system. It can identify intrusion into our systems, our network, our resources, and either proactively stall the intrusion or notify the administrator who will take the necessary action. That's the job of intrusion detection system. The first is the job of intrusion prevention system. So because we have these technologies on our systems, on our computing space, it gives us this sense of safety that we are protected. In spite of these installations, there have been massive cyber attacks. In fact, every day, there are thousands of cases of cyber attack globally. Some go reported, others go unreported. So the question is, why do we have increased or increasing cases of cyber attack in spite of specialized cybersecurity appliances or solutions that are meant to address cyber incidents? It is because so much effort is placed on technology and less on people and processes. And that is why you are in this journey to master the skill associated with cyber or the cybersecurity skill associated with people in the system, technology in the system, and processes in the system. For instance, you may want to say or want to ask, what aspect of cybersecurity addresses processes? We're talking about GRC, governance, risk, and compliance. Or you may want to say, what aspect of cybersecurity addresses what people? GRC addresses people. Data privacy too addresses people. Or you may want to say, okay, what aspect of cybersecurity addresses technology or implements technological security? You may want to talk about security operations and defense. You're going to master this skill as we move on. Let's look at the core principles aiding, guiding, and operating cybersecurity. Yes, we also call it this the core objectives of cybersecurity. In other words, should you implement network security, for instance, database security, web security, and the other forms of security, what should be your watchword? What should be the objective? What should you intend to achieve? There are basically three, though by extension, we have others, but basically three. It is often called the CIA triad. I love to call it the tripod. Yes, that is how I love to call it. I love to call it the tripod that holds the cybersecurity implementation of an organization, the cybersecurity processes, the cybersecurity technologies, or the security, as long as it is called cybersecurity or information security, whatever you call it, digital security, the tripod that carries it, that holds it, is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. For confidentiality, within the CIA triad, addresses access. The aim, the objective of confidentiality is to ensure only authorized persons can access digital resources, be it digital resources on a desktop, that is a system, please note what I'm referring to as desktop, a system not connected to a network, just a standalone system, or an on-prem network, for instance, a LAN, a MAN, that is a local area network, a metropolitan area network, or a campus area network, even a wide area network, or systems on the internet. The protection of these resources against, and this digital space, against unauthorized access is what confidentiality has come to bear. So, on the flip side, confidentiality, integrity, availability are like a coin. So on one side of the coin is protection against unauthorized access. On the flip side of the coin is the protection of that access. There's the protection against, and there's the protection of. Are you getting me? So protection against is denying unauthorized persons from gaining access. How do you implement this? As basic as implementing user credentials or implementing user accounts, where the user would need to provide his or her credentials, which includes username and password, the very basic of all user credentials. There are other user credentials, but the very basic is username and password. The fact that the individual will need to provide that data in order to gain access to that secured space, you are enforcing or implementing or achieving confidentiality. Then on the flip side of the coin is the protection of that resource. That is, if you are an authorized person, the protection of that resource is confidentiality also. So confidentiality, one thing is key with confidentiality, and it's got to do with access, the protection of access. Okay, I'm sorry, I've gotten a message. I can't hear. I hope, can I get a thumb up, the feedback? Am I audible? Can I get a thumbs up or two? Am I audible at your end? So just, yes, thank you. Toyosi said yes. So please, you may need to consider your connection. One of such ways to do, perhaps you just disconnect from the class and reconnect back. That may establish. Thank you, Uche. Okay, so in continuation of that, so let's look at integrity. Integrity addresses modification or alteration. I need you to commit this to mind. I hope you're getting me. Let me take it again. It is the crux of cybersecurity and is a take-home. Confidentiality addresses access. So protection against unauthorized access and the protection of that access. If that man is giving access, then let's protect the access because there's a cyber attack against access. I mean, I have successfully accessed a system. Now there is a session. That's a bit technical. There is a session. Protecting that session requires the implementation of confidentiality. So it's the protection of and the protection against, but the crux is access. For integrity is the protection against unauthorized modification. Then on the flip side of the coin is ensuring that only authorized persons can alter or modify a preserved or secured state of a digital resource. Now, I've given you confidentiality as basic as implementing username and password. For integrity, one such example of integrity is, for instance, the configuration of a device, like a router, the configuration of a switch, the configuration of a system. The system has been properly configured as approved by management or by the IT policy on configuration management. Protecting that state against unauthorized modification is the implementation of what? Integrity. Integrity is so vast because it includes concepts like accuracy of data, completeness of data, and so on and so forth. For instance, should I send an email to you or a message via SMS, and I want to ensure it delivers in full? The measure I'll put in place to ensure you receive the message in full and nothing gets missing in transit is what? Integrity in action. So integrity is quite broad in its implementation. There's the integrity of data, there's the integrity of programs or software or codes, there's the integrity of hardware. Like the instance I gave to you, configuring a router or a switch and protecting that state of configuration is integrity. The next is availability. This addresses usage. Now, the crux here is usage. Please note, ensuring that only authorized users can use a resource, a digital resource, which may be hardware, software, or data, which may be on-prem, on a desktop, or on the internet. Ensuring that only authorized users can use that resource is what availability addresses. So on the flip side is the protection against unauthorized usage. I hope you get it's clear now. Protection of usage, availability, protection of the integrity or accuracy of a digital resource against unauthorized modification is what? Integrity, and confidentiality is the protection of access. I hope that is clear. Okay. We have this as the objective. You see, protect confidentiality. You're protecting, for example, you're protecting social security number with encryption. Integrity, you're using digital signature. That's a bit advanced. You find that within public infrastructure. Or for availability, ensuring we have backups so that should the primary file gets missing or corrupt or damaged, we can restore that file or that data from the backup. That is availability. I like to quickly put here that the CIA triad, as simple as it appears based on its explanation, its implementation varies and its implementation is broad. So I can't go into that depth now. There are lots of concepts within the fold of cybersecurity, within the field of cybersecurity, that depicts confidentiality, integrity, and availability, from the basics to the advanced. You're meant to remember these three elements: that information, if information is confidential but not available, it is useless. We are trying to look at the relationship between these three, the CIA. If information is available but is not accurate, it may be misleading. If information is accurate but accessible to anyone, privacy will be what? Will be compromised. Please get these 3 points. It talks about the integration of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So Please note that. Examples of risk associated with confidentiality, that is the risk that might lead to loss of confidentiality. We have snooping, like it implies an individual snooping around like a snooping dog, trying to pick or assess. We have this oftentimes in office environments where someone is looking for an individual is just trying to what? Gather some pieces of some information from you, unknown to you. That would compromise confidentiality because the individual now has access, unauthorized access to such information. And this could be as we could have snooping on calls. We can have snooping through eavesdropping. We can have snooping on Unko, I don't get that. Please take it back to the last slide. I don't understand. Okay, then we can have snooping too on someone is dropping, could be digital or physical, and it's like it sounds you're not suspicious, you're not suspecting the individual, but the individual looks around in order to capture some confidential information that will compromise the confidentiality of that information. Dumpster diving. This is as simple as an individual goes into the dumpster in the office to search for maybe shredded paper or torn paper or some of those paper you no longer need, official documents you no longer need, just squeeze and throw into the dumpster. And to you, it's no longer useful. But to the individual who is launching his attack, is on the lookout for for a resource or an information from what you call garbage and you're disposing. So this would lead to loss of confidentiality. Eavesdropping can be electronic in case of a telephone call. Eavesdropping can be physical. Someone very close to snooping, someone listening to a conversation, maybe standing by the door. And if that conversation is confidential, the individual is privileged to hear, then that confidential discussion or information exchanged in that conversation has lost its confidentiality. Social engineering would also lead to loss of confidentiality. I'm going to talk about social. There's a slide for that. It is the biggest cyber attack in the digital world. I want to quickly tell you this, that except you do not connect to the internet, if you connect to the internet, you are directly or indirectly socially engineered, unknown to you. Some, if you are cyber aware, you can tell that this is social engineering. It has variants like phishing, smashing, vision, and so on and so forth. And there are lots of them, as in different approaches to launch social engineering attack. I want to say for the opt-in sign, except you are not connected to the internet. If you are, on a daily basis, you are being socially engineered directly or indirectly. You may not fall to it, but then that doesn't take away the fact that you were exposed to social engineering. Unauthorized modification of information is a risk to integrity. Like I did mention, that is the crux of what? Integrity, modification. And we have the mitigants there. Impersonation is another attack that will lead to loss of integrity. For instance, someone, okay, very good example is BEC, business email compromise. Someone compromises your email account or your social media handle. These platforms, we do know them, and uses your handle or your accounts for personal gain, account from you. So you can no longer access the account. That's impersonation. And that will lead to what? Loss of integrity. A very good example in impersonation is called fabrication. An individual accesses your email. Perhaps it's a business email and uses that creates a mail, sends out to initiate a business with a client. This time, like, we want to say on your behalf, but not on your behalf because you are unaware. Now, the individual initiates that mail and goes into a business transaction with that individual. And process of that transaction is paid into an account only for you, the rightful owner of the account, to realize someone has used your account for personal gain. That attack, which primarily is impersonation, extends into what is called fabrication. That is, the mail was fabricated. The fact that you were not the one who initiated the mail, we call such fabrication. That in itself would amount to loss of integrity. So there is snooping too, from being a threat or a risk factor to confidentiality, to being a risk factor to integrity. Snooping can also lead to loss of integrity. We know integrity involves accuracy, completeness of information, and so on and so forth. So an individual snooping on the conversation can make that conversation lose its integrity. For instance, the message might be intercepted through an attack called man-in-the-middle attack. A confidential message is sent from A to Mr. B, and an intruder intercepts the communication link, either by way of wiretapping in physical snooping, or by way of some digital applications, some software, and is able to intercept the message, read the message, probably modify the message, and releases the message to its destination. Obviously, the man at the other end might not know that message has gone through some modification before reaching him. And you might not also know that the message initiated from you got stalled. Yes, phishing, thank you, is a form of social engineering. I told you there is a slide for that, so I'm going to talk about it. There's a slide for that has phishing mentioned in it. It's the biggest variant or type of what I told you there are variants of social engineering, but phishing is the commonest. I'm going to talk about it later on. So the interceptor on a communication line, you might not be aware, and the man at the other end might not be aware too that the message reaching him has been modified. As long as the message has been intercepted, whether it is modified or not, that message has lost its integrity. It's as basic as that in cybersecurity. So when it comes to loss of integrity, we have four categories, not types, four categories of attack that leads to loss of integrity. We have interception, interruption, modification, and fabrication. I'm not going to talk about it now. Like I told you earlier, that the concept of CIA in its implementation is broad. So the risk factors that will lead to their loss are much. So let's look at this replay attack. This would also lead to loss of integrity. For instance, Mr. A uses fingerprints to access a logged room, and Mr. B wants to access that room but doesn't have the credentials like biometric to do that. He can forge the biometric of Mr. A. Sorry, there are technologies to do that, such that once he has it cloned, he can now use the cloned variants of Mr. A's biometric feature, like let's say fingerprint, to access that door lock, and it will respond. That is one example of a replay attack. Replay attack has so many kinds of so many measures in carrying it out. Okay, you know, I said something at the point. I said cybersecurity from the basic to advanced. So replay attack has the basics, just as simple as, okay, this is a form of replay attack. And also the advanced form of replay attacks. Okay, well, that's why you're here for the mastery. Then there's the denial of service attack. This attack is targeted at loss, to ensure there is a loss of availability. You will want to say, what? Okay, I said availability is in the light of usage. What do you use? Hardware, software, or data? I want to keep it simple at that. Just like we have CIA, we got people, technology, and processes as the pillars of cybersecurity. I want to keep digital resources within the confine of hardware, software, and data. Those digital resources can be more than this. In fact, it's much more than this, but keep it simple. An attack that ensures or that is directed at a resource being unavailable for authorized users is what we call denial of service. For instance, if it's targeted a phone, which is a physical resource, a physical device, that is denial of service. But if it is targeted at a website, that is, the attack is launched through the internet, it is called distributed denial of service. For instance, if I want to cause your phone to dysfunction, right, I can introduce a jammer into that environment, or I can distort with the aid of some attack agents or some attack agents and attack vectors. I can distort the frequency. Okay, for instance, let me say an access point that people within that environment, users within that environment connect to in order to browse. There is a way I can distort the frequency of that access point that it becomes impossible for users to connect their connect to it wirelessly. That is denial of service. But if it is targeted at a server on the network or at a web server, for instance, it is called distributed denial of service. Please, that's an advanced form of denial of service. Then power outage will definitely, this is clear. Should you lose energy to a device, what will happen? It will go off. That results in loss of availability. Then hardware failure. I booted my system in the morning. I turned it on and it booted successfully. I went for a break. I hibernated or placed it in sleep mode. I'm back and it's not booting again. Can I get a thumb up if you had such experience? That your device responded normally only for you to observe a break or pay attention to another task. And you're back to that device and it's not functioning again, or is now dysfunctioning. It's not functioning appropriately. That is what we call hardware failure. And that in itself is a risk factor to availability. But at that time, the resource becomes unavailable for use. You might now want to consider a repair or a replacement. Destruction of equipment, like sabotage. Destruction might be willful or it might be natural. For instance, thunderstorm can lead to the destruction of an equipment. This obviously will lead to loss of availability of that resource as long as it's destroyed. Service outage, for example, an internet service provider just go off service. As long as you can no longer enjoy internet connection from that service provider due to his what? He experiencing a downtime. That will lead to loss of availability. What's the availability here? The internet connection you were using, but due to the downtime on the part of the internet service provider, you too would not have connection. That amounts to service outage or loss of availability. There is a concept called non-repudiation. This is aside CIA. I mentioned that aside CIA being the tripod of cybersecurity, that there are other key concepts that also constitute principles of cybersecurity. For instance, we have authentication, authorization, audits, accountability, authenticity. That's 5 A's and N. I love to put it that way. 5, other than the CIA triad, we got the 5 A's and N. The 5 A's, I'll take it again, is authentication, authorization, audits, accountability before audits. Yes. So authentication, authorization, accountability, audits, authenticity, different from authentication, and then non-repudiation. These also are objectives or principles of cybersecurity. Just as we implement confidentiality, either physically or technologically, like we do for integrity, we do for availability. In the same vein, there are security measures that will lead to the actualization of these names I mentioned. One of such, which is non-repudiation, like it sounds, grammatically, repudiate means to deny. Non-repudiate means you cannot deny. A very good example is if you consummate your bank transaction using token, your bank administers you a token device and you consummate every transaction using token. How would you now tell the bank that a particular transaction was not from you? Because token, the use of token is an additional what? Security. Basically, transactions, should you initiate transaction in mobile app, because there might be need for you to occur, except if that account has been linked to a particular device. If you're accessing the account from the web, you need to log into that account. Layer 1 security. Then, let's now say even on the mobile application on your device, you initiate the transaction and it's asking for your PIN or biometric. And after you've entered it, it's now asking for what? For token. That's layered security. Dual factor, multi-factor. How would you now come back? Let's assume that it is true. Someone who could have played some pranks with your accounts and still got your PIN and was successful in doing that. But can it be possible for an individual to have access to your PIN and also have access to your token? Let's now say the token is not a physical device. The token is the one that will be sent to you. The token number will be sent to you through what? SMS. So how would you come to deny that that transaction was not initiated by you? So the use of token alongside your basic authentication measure like password or PIN or finger biometric feature is what we call protection against unauthorized, protection, enforcing non-repudiation so that you cannot deny it. Basically, you would use your PIN to consummate a transaction, but you now layered that security measure by introducing token. So it becomes a bit difficult to prove that the transaction did not come from you. There are other implementations that protects or implements non-repudiation. Okay, so I hope that is clear. We still have a build up on non-repudiation. So I hope that explanation is basic. Non-repudiation is crucial in the following situations: electronic contracts, financial transaction, like I did mention, medical records, voting systems, so that you cannot come out to say, no, doesn't mean I voted. How would you prove that? So we have such security measures. I just gave you one. The use of token alongside your basic credentials like biometric, password, or PIN to consummate a transaction. Oftentimes, non-repudiation is implemented through what we call layered security. In cybersecurity implementation, there are such models such as layered security. An example is defense in depth. Another such model is called Keep Information Security Simple, or Simplicity in Security, SIS. That's number 2. Number 3 is called the Zero Trust model. I'm going to talk about Zero Trust. There's a slide for that. Then the last is called Perimeter Security. That is the oldest of all cybersecurity models. That's quite massive. It means implementing cyber or designing cybersecurity into an infrastructure or into a digital system. You might need to adopt one of the models or implement 2 of these models. These are the very popular models. Outside these 4, there are other models. So let's go on. There are several technologies that can be implemented to achieve non-repudiation, or got digital signatures, timestamping services, secure audit logs, a lot of them. So I want us to go further by looking at cybersecurity process or processes as proposed or stipulated by NIST. There is a framework called the NIST CSF version 2.0. The current version of that document is 2.0. You might need to visit NIST, I think NIST.org if I'm not mistaken, but GOT is an American agency. I think that's National Institute for Science and Technology. You might need to visit their site to be able to access CSF. The NIST CSF version 2.0 is a necessary document for cybersecurity experts. Though there are other internationally recognized documentations for cybersecurity design and implementation, including cybersecurity administration and management. One of such is NIST CSF version 2.0. Another one is the ISO 27000, popularly called 27K. It is christened ISMS, Information Security Management System. Outside these 2, there are other cybersecurity documentations. Some are just within a state, some recognized on a global scale. But these are the 2 popular ones. ISO, from the body called International Organization for Standardization. I hope you know them. They are quite popular. The organization has been in existence for years. And alongside NIST, we'll have others too. So you just might do well to conduct a personal study on these cybersecurity frameworks, standards, or documentation. The beauty with these documentations is that should you need to implement a security measure into a digital space or a computing environment, instead of you sitting down and doing all the thinking yourself, these documentations contain or articulate outlines or details or processes. Sorry, NIST is a body. It's a government. Someone asked a question. NIST is a government body. Is a public. I mean, they operate in the U.S. NIST is a federal government agency of the United States and issues what we call standards and framework for basically STEM, science, technology, engineering, and let me say math, but basically the STE instead. They issue framework on a regular basis or sometimes review existing framework for science. It's a regulatory body. Thank you. It's a regulatory body in the US. We have regulatory bodies too in the UK or in Europe and other parts of, just like okay, we'll talk about like GDPR. We're going to talk about GDPR when we get to data privacy and protection. Thanks for sharing that link. So in the NIST CSF, they actually proposed or articulated these 5 capabilities that should you implement them or integrate them into your digital system, of course, you will be safe digitally. The first is to put measures in place that can identify digital resources that should be protected. I'm not going to go into the details because there's a very exhaustive documentation. You might want to do well to read more about it. I mean, go online and read about it. There are lots of write-ups on such documentations like ISO 27K, NIST, GDPR, TOGAF for security, COBIT, and there are a whole lot of documentations from professional bodies, regulatory bodies, standard bodies on cybersecurity or digital systems. So from NIST, you are asked to put measures in place that can identify what are these resources that should be protected. Number one, protection of digital resources starts with one, classification of those resources. You are to identify those resources that should be protected and classify them. One such classification is called critical resources. I like to put it here in the right perspective that we do not provide equal security measures to all digital resources. No, that would be wasteful. I repeat, in cybersecurity administration and implementation, we don't provide equal security measures across all digital resources. That would be a waste of resources. So what do? We identify and categorize these resources based on the following categories. Though some organizations have unique names for their categorization, but the very popular ones are what? Critical resources, sensitive resources, vital resources, and non-sensitive resources. Now, would you allocate equal security control, security resource to a critical resource and also to a non-sensitive resource? You wouldn't do that. That would be waste of cyber resources, cybersecurity resources. So what do? Upon classification of these resources, you now allocate security, because of course cybersecurity would expend resources. You're a cybersecurity expert engaged by an organization, you're going to use resources to carry out your task. So these resources got to be used judiciously. So first thing first, identify these resources and categorize them. Then number two, you are to protect, implement appropriate safeguards. There are what we call countermeasures and what we call safeguards. You need to implement the appropriate safeguards for this resource because it is classified so as critical, and this resource because it is classified so as vital. Please, the categorizations or the categories I mentioned are just generic. Every institution has their unique names for categorizing digital resources, but there is these two categories that you would find in almost any organization's categorization. That is critical and sensitive. Okay, so let's go on. The next is what? You are to detect, implement measures that can identify the occurrence of cybersecurity incidents. Yes, we got such measures, like for instance, implementing KRIs, key risk indicators, would help identify that there's a likely cyber attack. Okay, you could also implement technologies like intrusion detection system and intrusion prevention system to detect an attempted cyber attack. Also, response should be put in place on how to address an incident of a cyber attack. I like to quickly say this, that when it comes to cyber attacks, two key concepts, or two concepts are key when it comes to cyber attacks. One is threats. The second is vulnerability. Let me flip it. One is vulnerability. The other is threats. There will be no successful cyber attack in the absence of a vulnerability. Your system might have a known or unknown vulnerability, but do not translate into a cyber attack yet. because there is no threat to exploit it. The moment a threat appears on the surface and identifies the vulnerability, an attempt to exploit it would be initiated. It might not be immediate. If that attempt is initiated immediately, we would call that zero trust or zero-day attack. An attempt to exploit a vulnerability upon discovery is what is christened the zero-day attack. That is, the word 0 day, when we say 0 day, it means the threat did not give room for hours or days to plan or, before the attack is conducted. No, upon discovery, the attack is carried out and the vulnerability is exploited. That's one explanation of 0-day attack. So we should have response in place to contain or address such incidents once they are detected. Okay, let's build on it. Let's build up. They've got recovery. After an attack has occurred, a successful attack, of course, the institution will likely count its losses, if not a loss, but they will count because there will be impact from a successful attack. So measures got to be in place to help restore the organization's capabilities, restore its resources that have been lost to a cyber. After all, that an attack occurs doesn't mean we shouldn't return back to business. Of course, we got to return back. That should be the end to the business life or the going concern of that enterprise. So what do we do? Put measures in place for recovery or restoration. Let's look at digital threat landscape. It is popularly called threat landscape. The threat landscape depicts or illustrates the threats, vulnerabilities, and risk that digital resources are exposed to. I like to say here that cyber attacks are not only conducted on resources, digital, they're also conducted on human resources. In fact, the cyber attack popularly conducted on human resources is social engineering. There are lots of cyber attacks that are targeted at resources, human, electronic, both hardware resources, software, and data in its logical state. Attacks are targeted at cloud systems, targeted at on-prem systems, targeted at even standalone systems. Yes, an attack can be targeted at that laptop that is not connected to a network. There is this common thing that the only secured device is the device not connected to the internet. I beg to disagree. Or not connected to a network. I beg to disagree. Except on this clause, that's when I will agree. Except that resource. For instance, a computer does not collect data through a flash drive, external hard drive, or memory card. If that device is open to data collection or can transfer data to any of these external drives, then it is exposed to a cyber attack. I would like to put here that virus infection, as simple or let me say as basic as it is a cyber attack. So if a standalone device not connected to a network uses external drives, memory card, flash drives, what also called thumb drives or external hard drive, maybe SSD or HD, as long as it uses them, and these devices are also used on another device, the possibility that virus could, from the infected device where that drive was used and now connected to this standalone device, the possibility that there could be a cyber attack through virus infection or malware infection is 100%. So within the digital landscape, the digital threat landscape is ever changing. It is not constant. What it means is that what you knew yesterday about cyber attacks or threats might not be what you know again today, because that environment is very dynamic. And the reason for these dynamics could be due to technology. We never had AI some years ago. Now we got AI. Geopolitics, show of strength. One nation is showing that we are stronger than you, like cyber warfare. Economic factors, and the sophistication of threat actors, also called threat agents today. All of these are primary factors for the dynamics in the threat landscape. There's an analogy. Think of it like the weather forecast of cybersecurity. I mean, the threat landscape that depicts or encompasses threats, vulnerabilities, and risk. It tells you what storms are on the horizon, what the current conditions are, and how you can prepare. I would like to put here, I'll just give you a glimpse into threats, digital threats. A digital threat is a negative potential capable of causing harm. Should you hear the word virus, what comes to your mind? Harm. Abi, when you hear virus, what comes to your mind? Oh, infection. The fact that you can think about it, infection, shows that it has the potential to cause harm. So for the opt-in time, a digital threat is a negative potential capable of causing harm. Why did I say negative potential? I would explain. Why did I not call it a thing? Why did I classify it as a potential? Reason being that threats can be physical. Threats can be logical. Threats can be virtual. The fact that they are capable of causing harm in whatever state they are, that is a potential. So that's the digital threat landscape. Vulnerabilities are exposures or weaknesses within a digital system, process, or resource that can be exploited by threats. When threats exploit the vulnerabilities of a digital computing space, it will result in an event called risk. And should risk crystallize, obviously there would be impact. And that is why while managing risk, I'm going to talk about this in GROC. That will be our next class, not today. While managing risk, there are, please just wait, just come to class. We'll talk about risk then. Don't let me talk about it now. Okay, these threat actors or agents with the potential to cause harm include cyber criminals. For instance, a hacker who can exploit your bank details to his own gain and against you is a cyber criminal. A cyber criminal could possibly use a ransomware as a tool, also called threat vectors, to launch an attack. So that individual or objects that has the potential to cause harm is the threat actor. The instrumentation with which that harm is caused or with which the attack is launched is what we call the vector, or the channel or the medium constitutes the vector. When we get to GROC, the risk part of GROC, we'll talk more about it. Nation state actors, we're talking about hackers, intruders, threat actors who are sponsored. Are there agencies that arrest cyber? Of course there are. Every nation has its own agency. It might be created or formed specifically to launch an attack, to effect the arrest, or that task might be integrated into existing law enforcement agencies of the land. So we got nations of the world, countries whose governments sponsor cyber attackers. Yes, we call them nation-state actors. Then we got certain individuals who carry out cyber attack for the purpose of either calling an attention, maybe the government's attention or business leaders' attention, or for the purpose he has the skill and he offers it as a service. We call these persons activists. I like to put here that activists are actually cyber experts who channel that energy wrongdoing. Like me. I mean, there are persons like me with cyber competencies, but they just choose to use that skill to cause harm. A very good example, a kitchen cutlery can be used to eat and at the same time can be used to cause harm. So consider you using a kitchen cutlery like a knife to chop vegetables. It can also be used to cause harm. So the activist is that individual who is actually a cybersecurity expert, but is simply using that skill. Instead of use the skill for good, is using it to what? To cause harm. Then we got insiders within the institution who also constitute threat actors. Some of these insiders are planted within the institution. Some are compromised by an outsider, so that through the insider, a successful attack can be launched. A very good example of a cyber attack that can be launched through an insider is called advanced persistent threats. It's one of the topmost cyber attacks in the world. It can take from days to weeks to months to plan. And it's one of the most difficult cyber attacks to detect. The next threat actor here is called amateur hackers. We usually call them script kiddies. They don't have attack skills, but because there are available tools that can be used to launch attack, the moment they lay hand on that tool, they simply use the tool to their own advantage. We call them what? Script kiddies. They are not vast or deep in the knowledge of cybersecurity, but they can access tools that are used to launch attacks. Okay, want to look at modern threats. Please, what we're about to look at now is there's a whole lot about cyber attacks, cyber threats. There's a whole lot of them, but we just want to look at a few of these cyber threats and attacks. You may have heard about ransomware. It is a cyber attack in which the victim's system could be a server, a computer, or a database is encrypted, and the victim is asked to pay a ransom before the encrypted database, server, or system can be released. Not because the ransomware attacker takes the device from you, but he encrypts it and holds the decryption key. So until a ransom is paid, which could be monetary or sometimes cryptocurrencies or some other benefits, which they may, or other demands which may be placed by them, until it is met, they will not decrypt that resource. I like to say here that some of the causal factors of successful ransomware attack is you and I, users. An email might contain an infected link. A website might be designed for that purpose. Or a website not properly secured might be infected with a ransomware program or code. While accessing the site, your system just might be affected by it, and the next will be what? Well, sorry, you just realize that your system is what? Is encrypted. The desktop will just display a message if it is a system that's encrypted, or If it's a database, the next attempt to access the database, you get a prompt on the screen that the system has been encrypted, contact this number or communicate via this communicate with this email, or communicate with the attacker via this email. So the communication just might be through email, where you will tell you, okay, you got to provide this or make this payment and all of that. That's ransomware. The next is social engineering, also called, an example is called phishing. I mentioned earlier that there is a slide for that. This is where it is. Cisco Umbrella, I'm quoting Cisco. Cisco Umbrella is a product. Umbrella is a product from Cisco, a cybersecurity product from Cisco. True, when that brand was being advertised, there were these articles, daily articles that were posted online by Cisco. Cisco is a network equipment manufacturer from the United States. They've delved into cybersecurity. They are known for routing and switching. What I mean is they provide routers, or they produce routers and switches, and also access points, and also there are other things they produce now, but basically network appliances. But now they are into security. So while they were promoting the brand, there were this official statement from them that 85% of all successful attacks are actually social engineering alone. And I said there are hundreds, if not in their thousands, of cyber attacks. If just one accounts for 85%, don't you think it behoves of all of us to master cybersecurity? I take it again. If 85% of all cyber attacks can be attributed to just one cyber attack amidst hundreds of cyber attacks, don't you see the necessity to be cyber literate, cyber security literate? Don't you see the necessity for every personnel in the workplace to be given adequate cyber security education? Most successful cyber attacks are caused by social engineering. And social engineering could come in the form of voice, vision. You just might receive a call, and the caller would be impersonating a colleague, a friend, or even a loved one, and would deceive you into carry out an action or release some details. Or it could be an email, a spoofed email that is sent to you, or an email with a title that looks so appealing. Oh, you just won a jackpot. And you just might be tempted to follow the link. Click, open the mail, and follow the link. That is what is called phishing. Are you getting me? So phishing is one form of social engineering. I like to put it here in the right perspective, that because of the enormous attack conducted in the name of social engineering alone, it has today become an area of specialization in cybersecurity. We now have trained and certified social engineering experts in the world of cybersecurity. Because if an attack accounts for 85%, shouldn't that be an area of specialization? Of course it should. I've told you, and I'll repeat, that except you do not connect to the internet, if you do, you are exposed to social engineering. You just might not be a victim, but there were attempts of social engineering on you. There were attempts of social, except you do not connect to the internet. If you do, there were attempts of social engineering on you. You may not know they were social engineering. It might not catch your fancy. It might be as simple as an ad that you click on. The ad might not appeal to you. The ad might appeal to you, and you followed the link. And through that process, you get socially engineered. Let me just cap it up with this, that marketing campaigns Some marketing campaigns employ social engineering to get your attention. In fact, it is very common on the internet. You end up following an ad, placing order, or expressing interest because social engineering was built into the marketing. I will repeat, there are lots of lots of marketing campaigns with social engineering tactics built into them, not to cause harm, but to lure you, not to deceive you. Please note, but to lure you, to, let me use the right word, to entice you to patronize and place order. Sometimes you just might end up subscribing for something or acquiring, procuring an item, and later realize that, do I really need it? Malware, from the word, two words, malicious way, is another very common. As a matter of fact, in the 90s and early 2000s, it accounted for the highest cyber attacks. There was a time in the digital world, before we had multiplicities of sophisticated endpoint securities, antivirus, like the way they are popularly called. There was a time there were lots of virus attacks. You just can't be sure the next click might lead to a virus attack. It was called virus then, but we called them malware because in malware we have virus, worms, trojans, and a lot of other programs or codes that can cause harm. We got supply chain attacks. This is an attack that is launched. This is how supply chain attack is. An organization, ABC, has a third party, DEF, and an attacker, GHI, who is attempting to launch an attack at ABC, but finds the network too secured. And he knows that ABC grants digital access, that is through the extranet or through the internet, to the third party who provides him a service support or any other form of service rendering. GEF, the attacker, would launch an attack on DEF, note, GHI, an attacker, will launch a successful attack on DEF, the third party, and use that channel or use DEF as a channel who has an authorized access into ABC's network. He would not use that as a channel into ABC. Wouldn't that lead to a compromise? Wouldn't that lead to a successful attack? Of course it will. That is what we call supply chain attack. In other words, the third party becomes a chain, a supply chain for the attacker, GHI, to gain access into ABC's network that is so secured. One of such attack is called tailgating or piggybacking. In other words, GHI would compromise DEF every time DEF personnel as he attempts to log in into ABC's network. He would tailgate, the attacker would tailgate DEF in order to successfully gain access into ABC's network that is so fortified. Can you see how cyber attackers or attackers have gone, how far they've gone? These guys or these personnel, these persons behind the scene launching these attacks are so sophisticated. So should you be. If these persons are so sophisticated, why shouldn't you be so knowledgeable, be so practical, be so sound and informed as to protect yourself and your digital space? We got cloud computing vulnerabilities. It is no news that is where today's computing environment is on the internet. Because of this emergence of cloud computing, also called online computing or internet computing, there are some computing environments that are not so secure. Sometimes emphasis by cloud service providers are placed on the service to be rendered to a would-be subscriber rather than on the security measure, except they are offering you security as a service. So today's cloud computing space have some of them, I'm not saying all of them, because the very big names are also secured, although there have been reported cases of successful attacks on the popular cloud service providers. But that in itself is a modern day threat. Internet of Things. This is an advancement in technology that allows you to access a digital resource or access an electronic device. Prior to this time, it was a standalone device. For instance, your microwave oven in the house is now internet enabled. You forgot to turn it off, or that refrigerator in the house is now internet enabled, or the CCTV camera in the house is now internet enabled. Your smart watch is now internet enabled, or the lighting in the house is a smart home and is internet enabled. You forgot to turn off some appliances or some lights before leaving the house, and you felt, oh, I don't need to drive back home. I can access my home on my phone. You log in from your phone and you're able to turn off the lights. That's being smart, isn't it? Yes, digitally smart. But that advancement in technology is called the Internet of Things. One of the exploitations against Internet of Things is on CCTV camera. Yes, I want to put it to you correctly that if your CCTV camera installation, whether at work, at home, wherever it is not properly configured, that network, if it's not one CCTV, let's say you got like 4 or 5 or more than 2 that are interconnected, now you have the network, that CCTV network can be compromised, and you will not be the only one viewing the videos anymore or the recordings. There are some cyber attacks that are so stealth that the attacker is operating passively. There's what we call passive attack and active attack. The attacker is operating passively and remains within the system, unknown to you. Do you see the need why you should be cybersecurity literate? Do you see the need why you should be trained on cyber, even if you are not going to employ the skills to make money? You know what I mean? Even if you're not going to use it for an employment, do you see the need for cybersecurity skills? It is not for employment alone. It's not to showcase yourself outside and say, I'm a cybersecurity analyst or specialist, I'm open to employment. No. All of these are justifications why everyone should be cybersecurity literate. Okay, let's see. Humans, I've said this in passing, and I'm going to say it again, that humans constitute the biggest drawback in cybersecurity implementation. You remember the 3 pillars of cybersecurity? As a way to quickly test you, can somebody quickly mention the 3 pillars of cybersecurity? Who would mention? You can unmute or you can drop in the chat segment. The 3 pillars of cybersecurity. Who would mention? Yeah, I need somebody to tell us. The 3 pillars of cyber. Go to the chat segment and drop it there. The 3 pillars of cybersecurity. No, CIA is not pillars. CIA is what? Is principles of cybersecurity. The 3 pillars of cybersecurity. Who would tell us? The 3 pillars of cybersecurity. The 3 pillars of cybersecurity. Come on, I've taught you now. Okay, let me give you a hint. Technology. Process. Thank you. Technology, process, and what? And people, thank you for that rest, for the feedback. So let's get into it. Let's look at this. Sorry, my device. Okay. We said people constitute the pillars, right? We now want to look at that arm. That's part of the pillars. People. No matter the security implementation, the cybersecurity controls in a digital space, it is compromisable primarily because of you and I. There's this saying that a chain is as strong as its weakest points. The weak interlock in the talking about humans being the weakest link. Now look at this image. Look at the chain holding one ear and the chain holding the other. With less effort, you can pull the chain and the earlobe can detach, cut off from the body. That is how users are who are cyber illiterate. So imagine that institution whose employees are not cyber literate. This is how their system looks like. This is the true depiction of their digital space, their digital environment. Humans constitute the biggest attack surface in a digital space. Attacks are increasingly targeting people, not just technologies. I want to access your environment, but the perimeter security is too strong. What will I do? And I know your users are authorized. Then why don't I get into the user, compromise the user, and use the user as a gateway into the system? And that'll be all. That'll be fine. Users are the cheapest go through. The easiest and the cheapest to go through into a cyberspace, a digital world. The mitigation, continuous training, regular phishing simulations. In the field of cybersecurity, we simulate a lot. We simulate attacks a lot, so we can learn. We just create a fictitious attack. We launch attack fictitiously, so we can understand how strong or how weak our system is. Fostering a culture of security where suspicious activities can be reported on time. What this means is security management, cybersecurity controls shouldn't be the responsibility of Ade alone. Yes, we employed Ade as our cybersecurity analyst. Let's leave that responsibility to him. It is. No. Cybersecurity controls, protections, enforcement, safeguards, and countermeasures is now the responsibility of every individual, be it superior or subordinate, from operational staff to middle-level tactical managers and strategic heads, leaders. It is the responsibility up to the board. It is the responsibility of everyone to provide or implement cybersecurity measures. Let's look at this concept called proactive defense strategy. Cybersecurity implementations can be reactive, can be proactive. It is not safe to have a reactive measure alone, or that so much of your cybersecurity implementations are just reactive. What being reactive means is a cyber incident would have occurred before the necessary action is taken. That means the deed would have been done. The losses would be counting. Today's computing world requires a proactive defense mechanism. And an example of a proactive security implementation is threat intelligence. Stay informed about cyber attacks and vulnerabilities. You may want to know about
cyber attacks by visiting certain platforms online, like MITRE. No, MITRE talks more about vulnerabilities, but how would you master vulnerabilities in the absence of threat intelligence? Although vulnerability assessments and threat intelligence are two areas of specialization in cybersecurity, we often classify threat intelligence as offensive security, but vulnerability management, vulnerability assessment is both a defensive security and an offensive security. We're going to get to that slide very shortly. So be proactive in your cyber defense, cybersecurity strategy. Implement what we call zero trust architecture. This is the cybersecurity model. You know, I mentioned this amongst the 4 cybersecurity model. I take those 4 again: layered security, also called defense in depth; perimeter security; keep information security simple, also called security in simplicity. I mean, simplicity of security, SIS, or you call it KISS, keep information security simple. And the last is zero trust model, also called the zero trust architecture. What this model enunciates is never trust anyone or any resource, any device attempting to connect to your system without first verifying the resource. Authenticate, let the resource or that individual, that computer, that phone, that application accessing your resource, let it authenticate itself first. Verify that resource attempting to connect to your system. I mean, that digital device or that application attempting to connect to your system, verify it before access is granted. Then vulnerability management, you can master vulnerabilities from FIRST.org, Forum of Incident Response, and FIROST, a Forum of Incident Response and Security Team. You can visit FIRST.org. They are the one promoting CVSS, Common Vulnerability Scoring System, or you go to MITRE, MITRE. They are the one promoting CVE, Common Vulnerability and Exposure. Common Vulnerability. I think it's called Vulnerability Enumeration or something. I'm trying to remember now. Sorry, it just got some out of my head. CVE. Then you can also go to CISA, Cyber Security and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. So you can go to CISA, which is an American agency, to learn more about vulnerabilities. Then we got the implementation of multi-factor authentication. There are 3 primary means of authentication in a secured space. There is what you know, what you have, and who you are. What you know, example, username and password. What you have, example, a key fob or smart card. Who you are, anything biometric. Then incident response plan. This is another robust aspect of cybersecurity within a cluster called defensive security. We will talk more about this when we get to GRC and DPP. So the last lap in this training, for tonight's session, is cybersecurity competence. Some of you might want to ask, Ade, you talked so much about cybersecurity. I'm interested in becoming a cybersecurity expert. But what are the areas of capabilities that I can master in cybersecurity? You did tell us that cybersecurity is broad. What are these areas that I can master? Primarily, there are what we call the defensive security, DefSec, DEFSEC, and there's what we call the offensive security, OFSEC, OFFSEC. These are the 2 broad categories of cybersecurity capabilities. Within these categories are areas of competencies. For the defensive security experts, they are also called the blue team. Like the name sound, defensive. They are there to defend. They focus more on protection, detection, and response. For instance, incident management or incident response. The very popular type of plans you find within incident management is BCP, Business Continuity Plan, DROP, Disaster Recovery Plan. Experts within that route, who are also called business resilience or resilience experts, they fall within the blue team. Their goals will be to protect systems, network, and data. Key strategies are prevention, detection, response, and recovery. You can relate these 4 points with the NIST CSF version 2.0, right? Common tools to implement defensive security includes antivirus, malware, multi-factor authentication, and so on and so forth. Another common example, remember when I mentioned a model in cybersecurity called perimeter security? Oh, everything perimeter security is defensive security. Then on the flip side is offensive security. These guys are called the red team. They have an attacker's mindset. The aim is to attempt to exploit the weakness of a computing environment. So they're always on the lookout to identify exposures so as to exploit them. After all, that is what the attacker does. The attacker identifies vulnerabilities within your digital space or digital resource and exploits it, isn't it? Yes. So the offensive security experts would simulate a true life attack like an attacker will. And through that attack, identify areas of exploitation, otherwise called vulnerabilities. Strategies involve penetration testing, also called pen testing, red teaming, vulnerability assessment, and ethical hacking. Ski to Pro Academy is a cybersecurity training institution. It provides cybersecurity skills within the fold of defensive security and offensive security. You may want to consider DevSec, an area in DevSec or OffSec, or you may want to know more about this. Ski to Pro's front desk is readily available to furnish you with all relevant information and help you reach a decision point as to which area of competence you may want to go into. Common tools include Metasploit, BOP suite, Nmap, and social engineering. It will interest you to know that social engineering is, like I said earlier, there is an area of there's an area of specialization. It will interest you to know that it is offensive security. Lastly, as we cap it up, defensive security focuses on building and maintaining strong protection, e.g., perimeter security. Offensive security helps to identify gaps in those protections by thinking like an attacker, a hacker. This is a use case. A company might use defensive security to deploy firewalls, intrusion detection system, intrusion prevention system, encryption, and so on, while also hiring an ethical hacker or a penetration tester to test these defenses implemented by the blue team and make necessary recommendations. In other words, your institution should not only have the blue teams, but also engage the red teams. The red team member might not be engaged on full engagement or full employment, but might be consulted to test the implementation of the security implementation of the blue team. Unknown. This might be unknown to the blue team that there will be a test. I hope you get that. We have what we call the blind testing and double blind testing. Both tests, blind tests and double blind tests, are often carried out by the red team. Thank you for listening. And once again, thank you for joining in this session. TY, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ade. Please let us appreciate Ade for that wonderful session. It permits me to use this word. It is loaded. It is loaded. So you can imagine if the first class is like this, what will the second, the third, the fourth? In fact, I would like to encourage you, if you still know someone that will benefit from a class like this, please encourage them to do so as soon as possible. Thank you once again, Ade, for such a clear, insightful, and practical session. And to everyone here, we truly appreciate your attention, focus, and the time you've dedicated to learning today. So we'll now move into our question and answer segment. If you still have a question, please type it in the chat box. Remember, our classroom, we may not be able to take questions through voice, so all questions will be taken through the chat. Let's keep the questions specific to today's topic so we can address as many as possible within the time we have. This is your opportunity to get clarity directly from the instructor, Ade. No question is too basic, no question is too complex. If it will help you understand better, it's worth asking. Think of it as a part of your learning investment. So let's make the most time of it all. So I have some question here. Okay, if you still have your question, you can bring it in. There was a question about phishing, and I think Ade has attended. Can you hear me, please? If you can hear me, can I have a thumbs up? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so there was a question about phishing. I think that has been attended to. Someone asked what type of certification are we getting after the training? Yes, you are going to get a certification after the training. And one good thing about this certification is that it will come with a verification number, so you can access and it can be verified on our website, www.skill2pro.com. It can be verified at any time. Will be a number will be generated for you to do that. Yes, you are going to have access to these resources later. I want to take questions that Ade will be able to answer so that we can go back to the community to answer the remaining. Okay. I'm still trying to scroll to get some questions here. Okay, there's a question here from not a name. Okay, it says, Ade, I think it says, are there agencies that arrest cyber criminals?
You
I don't
want
know.
me to answer that now?
I don't know if you have, yes, I don't know if you have
Yes,
attended to
I
that.
did answer that in the course of the training, that every nation or country has its own some dedicated agencies for arresting cyber criminals, and some existing law enforcement agencies have that responsibility within integrated into the existing task to address cybercrime. I answered that in the course of the class.
Okay, so I think if there's any other question you think you need to Attend to. Okay. Please, in what area can cybersecurity be applied in a food system?
Okay.
From Rukayat. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. In a food system, whatever the system, from banking to telecom, food to chemicals, brewing to manufacturing, are technological devices in use. Do you make use of computers? These computers, of course, in a food system, you would have some departments that are not directly involved in the production, like the accounts department. Depending on the size of the organization, you might have the HR, the legal. Do they use computers? The answer is yes. Maybe in the cloud, they use cloud systems or cloud computing, or they use on-prem resources, software. And then do these systems accommodate confidential information about the organization? Now, you say a food system. Perhaps this food system is into research. This food processing organization is into research or has its own proprietary, what I'll call invention. Are they stored digitally? If yes, don't you think that that device accommodating them can be compromised? And if you classify this information or this knowledge gathered from your research or gathered over the years from work, if it gets into an attacker who can merchandise it, the attacker might not be using that information for personal gain, but might be merchandising it, selling it out to an individual who would be interested. Aren't you at loss? And this might not even be known to you to be happening at the background. I want to quickly say this, that there is a space in the internet called the darknet or the dark web. That is where illicit transactions are taking place. You cannot easily access that aspect of the internet, but should you, through a popular browser called Tor, T-O-R, you will be amazed what trades or what exchange in hands at that realm. I've been to that realm a number of times. You will be shocked. So what if your confidential information is taken from you? For instance, your client's database, I mean for the food system, is compromised and their emails, phone numbers extracted, even unknown to you. Do you know emails and phone number are a big commercial resource? Do you know you can sell phone numbers and emails that would be used by social engineering attackers? It is a web. Whatever the system, stay safe. I hope I've answered that.
Okay, thank you, Ade. You can also respond if he has answered your question so we can know. I have another question here. Is it a crime to carry out an offensive security since it involves thinking like an attacker?
Thank you for that question. If you carry out an offensive security like pen testing or ethical hacking without authorities' approval, what I mean authority, after all, you're conducting an attack on an organization's installation. If the management or leadership of that institution are unaware or you do not secure approval to carry out that attack, it becomes offensive, or let me say, it becomes illegal. You can be charged to court, and if found guilty, you might be sentenced. It is an aspect of cybersecurity that is very regulated. You should secure, management should be in the know, and you should secure a documented approval outlining the scope of that exercise, because they just might say no to some of the proposed attack. So you can be safe, and they too can be safe. Lastly, I want to say this. Every penetration testing
simulation or ethical hacking attack leaves vulnerabilities wide open. So if management or leadership is not in the know and you conduct such, if that vulnerability was just 1 inch wide, that attack on that attack surface just might leave it 1 foot wide. It means what was not known to other attackers might now becomes obvious and becomes a channel into that system. So please ensure before conducting any form of offensive security in form of attacks or penetration testing, the management is in the know, scope is defined and agreed, and approval is documented.
Okay, thank you, Ade. I have another one here. And the question goes thus: people who use phishing on someone as a threat, are they known as script kiddie?
No. Script kiddies. Okay, let me quickly say this. A script kiddie is an attack agent or an attack actor, right? Is a cyber attacker. He can employ social engineering. Although they are the list of an array of cyber attackers. A cyber attacker can employ social engineering to launch an attack. Social engineering is not the end to the attack itself. It is just one amongst other attacks to be carried out or that is being carried out by an attacker. So not all successful attacks would employ social engineering, but a script kiddie just might employ social engineering to get his way. I hope that is clear. Social
Okay.
engineering is broad. So
Thank
just
you,
might employ
Ade.
it. Yeah.
Another one here. Can you discuss the challenges and solutions related to securing the Internet of Things?
Thank you. Challenges to securing the internet, challenges and solutions to securing the Internet of Things.
Yes, please.
Internet of Things, I said earlier that it is an advancement in technology and it has not gotten to its end. Smart devices keep emerging. And I need you to know this, that every technology has a vulnerability. So if it is called a smart device or an internet of is within the world, every smart device actually is an aspect, I mean, it's within the concept of Internet of Things. Obviously, these devices or appliances or solutions have their vulnerabilities, which might be known or unknown. Now, the onus is on you as a user of Internet of Things technology to often carry out a vulnerability assessment. Or if you are not conducting it, please refer to sites like MITRE, like FOSS, like CISA. There are other sites where you don't necessarily, where you can easily fetch vulnerability information from. I still saw, I was on the site yesterday. So I subscribed to this site so I get notification. I still saw from MITRE a recent update that I think it was released yesterday. I know I saw it yesterday or the day before that day. So you may need to associate yourself with communities online that provide sensitization about Internet of Things vulnerabilities and how to address them. I think that there are lots of Internet of Things technology. One of them is just CCTV. There are others, even your smart device, there are lots of them. So there's no one cap fits all. But ensure you associate with communities where you can easily fetch information about known vulnerabilities and ideal response or responses that should be carried out so as to address. And then lastly, please acquire technologies that are smart from genuine sources or top-rated sources. I am not demarketing any brand. The reason why I said you should acquire these technologies, I know technologies are not cheap, but it is the cheap technologies sometimes that even create problems. If you acquire technologies from the genuine sources, you can be sure of support, like firmware updates and so on and so on, because they too are aware of these vulnerabilities. So they would release patches to address them. But should you buy Internet of Things based technologies from open source outside markets, you just might be on your own because you will not be receiving security support from you just might not be receiving security support from the vendors. And if you are not, that in itself is a major exposure. I think that answers that.
Okay, thank you, Ade. So I'm going to lump these two questions together because I feel they are related. The first one is, what essential programming languages should a cybersecurity analyst, specifically a red team aspirant, know? Then the second one is, you only spoke about the blue and red team. What about other teams such as white, black, gray team?
Okay. I am speaking authoritatively. Everything I said it professionally, and I want to sound as an authority again that there are only two teams, and by extension, a third team. I don't know what you meant by white team. Perhaps you are referring to gray hat hacking, white hat hacking, black hat hacking. Maybe you're speaking from that spectrum. But within professional, as cybersecurity, as an area of professional, as an area of professionalization, as a professional area, let me put it that way, there are two popular teams. There is the red team and the blue team. The third team is an emerging team. It is called purple team. I did not talk about it because tech tools that they require to work with are not common yet. So far, I only know Kali to be the only brand for or containing Kali's Linux to be the only solution with the red team tool. The purple team tool. And I don't want to talk about it elaborately because you can easily download Kali Linux into a virtual machine, but getting Kali purple, it goes through some procedure. You can go to their site and read more about it, right? So for now, the very popular teams are the red team and the blue team. I hope that answers that. So all those other teams might just be discussions or write-ups from other authors. But professionally, we got the blue team and the red team. That's defensive and offensive. Okay, for the programming language, we have Python for cybersecurity. It is the red teams actually that work with programming languages for cybersecurity. The blue teams don't code, they just use technologies. You guys, well, I hope you understand that. They don't code. They simply use technologies, existing technologies. But the red team can develop their solution with the aid of a programming language like Python. Then those who are into development of malware, good. Except maybe you want to understand from that point of view. There are experts who develop malware. They are not necessarily cybersecurity experts. Any programmer who is good with certain programming languages, I'm not going to mention, so that you don't quote me out of context, that they said this particular programming language is used to develop malware. I won't say so. I've not said so, and that's why I will be silent on that. But a very good software developer who is skillful at using certain programming languages can use those programming languages, I won't mention the name, to develop a malware and launch an attack with that malware. But the very popular tool is Python for security. I hope that answers. Then lastly, for the offensive, they have this very popular tool called Kali Linux. you may also want to employ Black Arc. Black Arc, it's another tool, it's an OS, or Parrot OS. These are the three very popular operating systems containing tools for the offensive team, for the red team. I hope that caps it.
Okay, thank you so much, Ade. I have two more questions to go. The first one, are there more authentication factors other than the three mentioned in the class? What you
Thank
have,
you.
what you know, where you are.
Okay. Let me even, I think he has even mentioned, okay. What you have, where you know. Yes, there is where you are. Where you are. If this is popularly used on websites. Some websites might deny you access to the landing page or any of the pages on the site. You just might get this prompt that access to this site is denied to users or visitors from your region. You may have seen that. I don't know if you received such denial. That is because they used where you are, which is geoposition, to authenticate. You are not the one providing the authentication, but they were able to pick that as a way of authenticating you. So when they picked it and realized that, oh, you're coming from a location, they will deny you access. So they could be using GPS or VPS, or they could also be using what? IP address, because every IP address out there, public IP address, has a geolocation. So you just might be using that. So that's one of others that are you, but they are not credentials, authentication credentials that you supply yourself. The authentication credentials that the end user would supply in order to gain access to a secure environment is primarily within what you have, what you know, and who you are. I hope that's clear. All others are not necessarily credentials. They don't. End users don't supply them. They are just picked from the end user's attempted access. So that is why we still limit it to these three, because we are dealing with the end user who is providing it himself or herself. Okay, I think I've been able to answer that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ade. So the last one, it says, since effective offensive security often relies on understanding how systems are designed and defended, and effective defensive security benefits from knowing attack methods. Is there a foundational overlap between the two that every cybersecurity professional should master?
The overlap is what I called the purple team. The purple team are experts in cybersecurity who have the skill or technical know-how in offensive and in defensive. I said it is not so popular yet in the world of cybersecurity, although those operators in the field know about it, that there's a purple team. That is where the overlap is. But to respond further, it is good if you master both. But at the same time, it is demanding. The overhead to master both is very demanding in terms of time overhead, cost overhead, knowledge overhead, all the overheads you need to commit to master both is much. So I would rather advise that why don't you specialize in one path and be very good at it? Then you might now know just one or two of the other aspects, because both sides have lots of skill sets to acquire or to master. So why would you want to know this aspect so much and also want to know this aspect so much? Although, as you grow on the job, let's assume you are an offensive expert and you have a job. As you grow on the job, as you rise up to become a leader, less of offensive capabilities will be required of you and more of defensive. So at a technical level, specialize on either offensive or defensive. Do not rush to know both, and you would eventually be using both on the job. But as you rise on the job, the need will naturally arise for you to master an aspect of the other, most especially from offensive to defensive. I hope I've answered that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ade. Our time is fast spent. I know we still have some questions and it will be addressed in the community. Like a question here that says, as a beginner in the journey of cybersecurity, is there any book or YouTube channel that simplifies cybersecurity as you have done this evening? So I think that also had the feedback. Let's appreciate Ade once again for breaking it down for us. Thank you so much. So yes, we have a YouTube channel and the class will be updated in due time. In due time, it will be uploaded. And you can also go through our website you can navigate through our website to see some courses we have to if you are decided on the type of cybersecurity training or you would like to go into. Thank you so much. And that brings us to the end of today's training session. On behalf of Skill to Pro Academy, I would like to thank you for your time, your focus, and participation. I also want you to remember attendance is tracked. So please continue to join with the same name you registered with. Also, the next session will build on what we've covered today, so it's important for you to attend each class. If you haven't already, kindly join our official communities for updates and resources. The link will be shared in the chat box. If you have additional questions, like I said earlier, after the session, you can send them via email or as a direct WhatsApp message to the Secretariat. We appreciate your commitment to learning and look forward to seeing you in the next sessions. The next class will be tomorrow, same time. Have a great day.